Hi guys, tonight, we travel back into the world's most forgotten history. Close your eyes, relax, and drift into history. Welcome to another quiet journey through the past. Tonight's story begins in a distant forgotten age. Settle in, and let history slowly fade you into sleep. This is boring history for sleep. Relax, and step gently into the ancient world. Tonight, history becomes calm, quiet, and sleepy. Let the past carry you softly into sleep. In tonight's slow and peaceful history story, we will wander through the quiet world of ancient Roman families. There are no armies marching tonight. No great speeches echo through crowded forums. No emperor is waiting to make an important announcement. Instead, we will begin somewhere much smaller. A narrow street. A closed wooden door. A little household resting behind thick walls. Perhaps there is a small lamp burning inside. Perhaps someone has left a clay cup beside a sleeping place. Perhaps the last warmth from the evening cooking fire is still resting in the room. Outside, Rome is becoming quieter. The stones beneath the feet of late travelers have begun to cool. The voices from the streets are softer now. A dog moves somewhere in the darkness. A wooden shutter closes. Farther away, perhaps, there is the faint sound of water being carried through a courtyard. Then there is silence again. And within that silence, an ordinary Roman family sleeps. This is where our journey begins. Not with Caesar. Not with a battlefield. Not with a marble temple. But with people who woke each morning, ate when food was available, worked when work was needed, worried about small things, cared for children, washed clothes, prepared meals, repaired sandals, carried water, swept floors, and waited patiently for another day to pass. The Roman world was enormous. Its roads crossed mountains and valleys. Its ships moved across wide seas. Its soldiers traveled to distant frontiers. Its merchants carried oil, grain, wine, pottery, and cloth from one region to another. Yet most people did not experience this great empire as a map. They experienced it as a doorway. A room. A courtyard. A cooking pot. A familiar face. A sleeping mat. A patch of sunlight on a wall. The empire was large. But daily life was usually close. And so, as the night settles gently over the ancient streets, we can imagine a small Roman home. The house does not need to belong to a wealthy senator. It may belong to a family of modest means. The walls are plain. The floor is worn. The furniture is simple. There are no grand decorations. There may be a small household shrine somewhere inside, with a few little figures watching quietly over the family. The doorway opens onto a street that is still dusty from the day's movement. During the day, people would have passed here constantly. Workers carrying baskets. Children walking beside older relatives. Shopkeepers calling softly to customers. Women carrying water. Men returning from workshops. Donkeys moving slowly through the narrow streets. Someone bringing bread home. Someone else carrying a bundle of firewood. Someone stopping briefly to speak with a neighbor. Now, in the dark, all of these movements have slowed. The street belongs to the night. Inside the home, the family has already settled down. There is little need for conversation. The day has been long. Tomorrow will ask for much of the same effort. And so there is comfort in sleep. The ancient Roman household could be a busy place. Several generations might live close together. There could be parents, children, grandparents, relatives, servants, and other workers sharing the same household space. but the exact arrangement changed from family to family. Some homes were small. Some were crowded. Some were comfortable. Some were very poor. Some families lived above shops. Some lived in apartments. Some lived in houses built around courtyards. Some lived in rural farms where the fields began only a short walk beyond the doorway. There was no single Roman home. There were thousands upon thousands of different homes. And each one had its own quiet rhythm. Let us stay with one of them for a while. Imagine the first faint light of morning. The darkness has not completely disappeared. A pale gray glow rests beyond the doorway. The air is still cool. For a short time, before the streets become active, the household is almost silent. Someone wakes. Perhaps an older member of the family. Perhaps a servant. Perhaps a mother who has already learned to wake before everyone else. There is no clock chiming. No mechanical sound announces the hour. Morning arrives gradually. The light itself is the signal. A person sits up. Cloth shifts softly. A hand reaches for a sandal. Bare feet touch the floor. The household begins to breathe again. The first task may be lighting a small fire. Wood is placed carefully. Dry material catches. A small flame appears. For a moment, the room glows. The fire is not large. It does not need to be. It only needs to be enough for cooking. The smell of smoke slowly moves through the house. Outside, the morning air is cool against the stone. A person steps into the courtyard. Perhaps there is a little water waiting there. Perhaps a basin. Perhaps yesterday's dust has settled on the floor. The day begins with simple work. Water must be carried. Food must be prepared. Clothes must be arranged. Children must be awakened. Tools must be found. A door must be opened. Nothing about this morning is famous. And that is precisely why it is worth staying here. History often remembers unusual moments. But human life is mostly made from ordinary ones. A person wakes. A person eats. A person works. A person becomes tired. A person rests. Then the same pattern begins again. In a Roman household, breakfast could be simple. Bread was important. There might be olives. Perhaps fruit when it was in season. Perhaps cheese. Perhaps a little porridge. For some families, food was plentiful. For others, every portion mattered. Grain was especially important to the Roman world. Bread could be bought from a baker, made at home, or prepared in a small household space. The smell of fresh bread drifting through a morning street would have been familiar. Warm grain. Smoke. Wood. Dust. Human voices. Animals moving nearby. These small smells belong to the morning. A child might sit near the cooking area, still sleepy. An older relative might divide bread. A servant might carry a vessel of water. Someone might already be thinking about the day's work. The Roman family was not always a quiet little group sitting together around one table. The household was also a place of responsibilities. The head of the household held considerable authority. Roman society placed strong importance on family structure. A household was not simply a group of people who happened to live under one roof. It was an organized social unit. The father, when present and holding the legal position of household head, could possess broad authority over family members and property. But behind this formal structure was a much softer world of daily relationships. Parents knew the sounds of their children's footsteps. Children recognized the voices of older relatives. Husbands and wives shared meals, work, concerns, and routines. Brothers and sisters grew up beside one another. Servants and enslaved people were also part of many households, though their position was deeply unequal and often harsh. The Roman family was therefore both intimate and structured. It contained affection. It contained duty. It contained hierarchy. And it contained many ordinary moments that left no written record. A mother might straighten a child's clothing before sending them outside. A father might inspect a tool. A grandmother might sit in a shaded corner. A young person might carry a basket toward the market. Someone might complain about the heat. Someone might quietly hope for rain. Someone might have slept badly. Someone might be feeling tired. These small human details are almost invisible in the grand histories of Rome. Yet they filled most of the days. Outside, the city wakes more completely. The sound of sandals begins to return. First there are only a few footsteps. Then more. A door opens. Another closes. A cart moves over uneven stone. Wooden wheels make a low, repeating sound. A merchant arranges goods. A baker begins his work. A fisherman, if the household is near a river or coast, may already be returning with the night's catch. In a city such as Rome, the morning could become crowded very quickly. The streets were not designed for modern ideas of quiet movement. They were narrow, irregular, and full of life. People walked close together. Animals passed through. Goods were carried. Voices rose and fell. But even within all this movement, individual families followed their own little paths. A child leaves the doorway. Perhaps the child walks toward a teacher. Perhaps toward a workshop. Perhaps nowhere at all. Not every Roman child received formal education. The experience depended greatly on wealth, family expectations, location, and gender. Some boys from wealthier households might study reading, writing, and literature. Some girls did too. Other children learned through daily life. They watched adults. They carried small loads. They learned household tasks. They learned trades. They learned how to behave in public. They learned by repeating what they had seen. The ancient world had many forms of education. Some took place in schools. Much more took place at home. A child could learn by sitting beside a parent while bread was made. By watching someone repair a sandal. By carrying water. By helping in a shop. By following a farmer into a field. By observing how a household prepared for winter. Learning did not always require a teacher standing before a group of students. Often, learning was simply part of living. And so the morning continues. In a small home, a woman may be grinding grain. The motion is slow and repetitive. Stone moves against stone. The sound is steady. The work requires strength. Dust from the grain gathers nearby. There is nothing hurried about it. The same motion must be repeated until enough flour is ready. Nearby, someone prepares a pot. Water is added. A fire is adjusted. The smell of grain becomes warmer. Perhaps vegetables are placed inside. Perhaps lentils. Perhaps herbs. The meal will not be elaborate. It only needs to feed the household. Roman cooking varied greatly depending on region and wealth. The empire brought together many landscapes. There were vineyards, olive groves, wheat fields, vegetable gardens, fruit trees, pastures, coastal fishing communities, mountain farms. Every region contributed something. But a family living in a particular place ate what could be grown, traded, bought, or preserved there. The great network of Roman roads and ships allowed foods to travel long distances. Yet most meals still depended on local routines. The farmer waited for the harvest. The baker waited for flour. The fisherman waited for the tide. The household waited for the cooking pot. And while the food simmered, the day moved forward. There is something gentle about imagining an ancient kitchen at this hour. The fire makes a soft sound. A wooden spoon touches the side of a pot. Someone walks across the floor. A child speaks quietly. A bird calls from somewhere outside. The smell of smoke rises toward the roof. Sunlight enters slowly. The walls begin to warm. And the family continues. In wealthier homes, there could be more servants to prepare food and maintain the household. In poorer homes, family members had to do much of the work themselves. This difference shaped daily life. A wealthy Roman might wake in a large house with several rooms arranged around an open courtyard. There might be painted walls, stone floors, furniture, storage rooms, a kitchen area, a private garden, water brought through pipes or carried by servants. A poor family might live in a cramped apartment with very little space. The contrast could be enormous. But both households still depended upon the rising sun. Both needed food. Both needed water. Both needed sleep. Both knew the changing seasons. Both experienced illness. Both watched children grow. Both waited for the next morning. The great differences of Roman society existed alongside these shared rhythms. A farmer in a distant village might spend the morning looking across a field. The soil is dry beneath his feet. The sun climbs higher. He checks the plants. He repairs something that has broken. Perhaps he has a donkey nearby. Perhaps another family member is working beside him. The work is slow. Agricultural life was demanding. There were no easy shortcuts. Fields had to be prepared. Seeds had to be planted. Crops had to be protected. Harvests had to be gathered. Animals had to be fed. Tools had to be repaired. Water had to be managed. And every season brought its own work. The family farm was therefore a place of constant repetition. The same field could be seen year after year. The same path could be walked thousands of times. The same wooden handle could be held through many seasons. A child who watched a parent work might eventually take that same tool into the field. The pattern of life could stretch across generations. In the city, the same sense of repetition existed in different forms. A craftsman opened his workshop. A potter prepared clay. A carpenter examined a piece of wood. A metal worker began heating material. A baker checked the oven. A cloth worker prepared thread. A shopkeeper arranged goods. The sounds of labor filled the streets. Hammering. Grinding. Sweeping. Calling. Walking. Carrying. Then, beneath all these sounds, there was the constant human rhythm of breathing and resting. Roman workers became tired. Their shoulders became heavy. Their hands became rough. Their feet hurt after long hours. The heat could become oppressive. In summer, the stone streets reflected the sunlight. Walls held warmth. Dust rose under passing feet. People sought shade wherever they could. A narrow awning might provide a little relief. A courtyard might offer cooler air. A tree could become a precious place to sit. The wealthy had more ways to escape heat. The poor had fewer. Still, Shade was shade. A small patch of darkness beneath a roof could feel peaceful. A person might sit there for a few minutes. Perhaps drinking water. Perhaps eating a piece of bread. Perhaps simply looking toward the street. There was no need to fill every quiet moment. Sometimes the body only needed to stop. This was especially true for workers whose days were physically demanding. A builder carrying stone could not work forever. A farmer could not remain in the field without rest. A fisherman could not pull nets endlessly. A servant could not move constantly from one task to another. The human body has always asked for pauses. And so ancient Roman life, for all its activity, also contained many small rests. A person sitting against a wall. A person leaning beneath an olive tree. A person lying briefly on a mat. A person closing their eyes while waiting for food to cook. A person washing dust from their hands. These moments rarely entered official records. But they were part of every day. In the afternoon, the light changes. The streets become bright and pale. The shadows grow shorter. The air becomes heavier. Some people continue working. Others return home. Markets remain active. Animals move slowly. A child walks through the shade. A woman carries a basket. A man carries a bundle of wood. Somewhere, water is poured from one clay vessel into another. The sound is soft. For a moment, it is almost the only thing heard. Then footsteps pass. The moment disappears. This is how a day feels when it is remembered not through monuments, but through small sounds. Water. Sandals. Wood. Bread. Fire. Breathing. The Roman household lived inside the soundscape. A family might have a small courtyard where sunlight entered from above. The courtyard could serve many purposes. People could work there. Children could play. Clothes could be dried. Water could be stored. Food could be prepared. Rain could fall into the open space. Plants might grow if there was enough room. The walls around the courtyard created a private world within the larger city. Outside, the streets were public. Inside, the family could retreat. At the center of some homes, there was a small household shrine associated with the protective spirits of the family and home. These domestic traditions were part of ordinary Roman life. Before meals, during family rituals, or at special moments, a household might make small offerings. The gestures could be simple. A little food. A little wine. A little incense. The act connected the family with the unseen traditions passed down through generations. There was no need for a grand temple. The sacred could exist in a small corner of the home. A quiet flame. A small figure. A familiar ritual. And then the household returned to its daily work. This mixture of ordinary life and religious practice was common in the ancient world. People did not always separate daily life from belief as neatly as we might imagine. The home itself could hold memories, customs, hopes, and fears. Children learned family traditions from adults. Adults had learned them from their parents. The same small gestures could be repeated for generations. A family might remember an ancestor. A household might preserve an object. A name might be given to a child because it belonged to an older generation. The past was present inside the home. Not as a history book. As a habit. As a name. As a story told quietly. As an object kept in a corner. As a familiar ritual repeated without much thought. By late afternoon, the heat begins to soften. The sun moves lower. The walls no longer feel quite so hot. Workers begin returning. A farmer comes home with dust on his feet. A fisherman carries his catch. A merchant closes his shop. A craftsman puts away his tools. The street remains busy, but the mood changes. People are going home. The day's work is gradually being put down. A family member waits near the doorway. Someone asks whether everything went well. Someone brings food inside. Someone washes. Someone removes dusty sandals. The home becomes active again. Evening cooking begins. This is one of the most familiar rhythms in human history. Morning work. Afternoon tiredness. Evening food. Night rest. The details changed. The rhythm remained. A pot is placed near the fire. Bread is divided. Olives may be set out. Vegetables are prepared. Perhaps there is fish. Perhaps there is cheese. Perhaps the meal is very simple. The smell of cooking spreads through the room. Children become more energetic now that the day's work is finished. An older person sits nearby. Someone speaks about a neighbor. Someone remembers something that needs to be done tomorrow. A servant carries a vessel. The fire gives warmth. Outside, the sky becomes darker. One by one, the sounds of the street begin to fade. But Rome does not become completely silent. It is too large for that. There may still be carts. There may still be footsteps. There may be people returning from work. There may be voices from another building. There may be animals moving through the darkness. Yet the household itself becomes quieter. After the meal, there is little reason to hurry. A person might sit for a while. The day has already taken most of their energy. The body understands that sleep is coming. In a poorer home, sleeping arrangements may be simple. A mat. A blanket. A low bed. Perhaps several people sleeping in the same room. In a wealthier home, beds could be more comfortable and private. Roman sleeping conditions varied widely. But darkness was the same for everyone. The lamp burns low. Its small flame moves slightly in the air. The walls glow softly. The room is filled with shadows. Someone lies down. The cloth beneath them shifts. A child settles into sleep. An older relative turns onto one side. Someone outside walks past the doorway. The footsteps fade. The family is almost still. And somewhere beyond the walls, Rome continues breathing. There are thousands of homes. Thousands of small lamps. Thousands of families settling down. Some are wealthy. Some are poor. Some are large. Some are small. Some are celebrating a birth. Some are worried about illness. Some are waiting for someone to return. Some are already asleep. The city contains all of these lives at once. And yet each family experiences only a small portion of it. A Roman person did not need to understand the whole empire to live within it. They needed to know their street, their market, their workplace, their relatives, their neighbors, their field, their river, their local temple, their familiar paths. The world could be enormous beyond the horizon. But home remained close. Perhaps that is why the household mattered so much. It was where the enormous world became small enough to understand. A child knew the doorway. A mother knew the cooking fire. A worker knew the tools. A farmer knew the field. A servant knew the rooms that needed cleaning. A merchant knew the shelves of his shop. A fisherman knew the river or sea. These familiar places gave shape to the passing years. The Roman calendar moved forward. Seasons changed. Rain came. Heat came. Cold mornings returned. Harvests arrived. Markets changed. Children grew taller. Older people became slower. A family might move. A child might marry. A new baby might arrive. Someone might leave for military service. Someone might travel for trade. Someone might never return. But for many people, much of life remained remarkably repetitive. That repetition could be tiring. It could also be comforting. Tomorrow morning, the fire would need to be lit again. Bread would need to be prepared. Water would need to be carried. The street would become busy. The farmer would return to the field. The craftsman would reopen the workshop. The child would wake. The same sun would rise. And for now, there was nothing to do but sleep. The lamp burns lower. The oil inside it slowly disappears. A small flame leans toward one side. Then becomes steady again. The room is warm. The outside air is cooler. A breeze passes along the street. It carries dust with it. The dust settles against the walls. The household does not notice. Everyone is tired. A few last sounds drift through the night. A distant voice. A footstep. The soft movement of an animal. Then nothing for a while. And in this quiet, the Roman family rests. Perhaps someone dreams. Perhaps someone wakes briefly and then returns to sleep. Perhaps a child turns beneath a blanket. Perhaps an older person listens to the night. There is no need to know what tomorrow will bring. Tomorrow can wait. The ancient world is not moving anywhere tonight. The roads can wait. The markets can wait. The fields can wait until morning. The boats can wait near the shore. The tools can remain where they were left. The doors can stay closed. The fire can become ash. And the family can simply rest. Outside, the stone streets hold the last warmth of the day. Above them, the night sky stretches across the Roman world. Beyond the city are farms and villages. Beyond them are hills. Beyond the hills are rivers and forests. Farther still are distant provinces connected by roads and sea. But inside this small home, the world has become very simple. A wall. A roof. A sleeping place. A little warmth. A quiet breath. A family gathered together beneath the darkness. And as the night deepens, the great Roman Empire becomes almost invisible. There are no borders in this room. No maps. No official titles. Only the soft and ordinary life of people who have finished another day. Tomorrow, the same hands will rise again. The same feet will cross the floor. The same doorway will open. The same street will fill with footsteps. But tonight, for a few peaceful hours, everything is still. And so we can remain here a little longer. Not watching Rome from above. Not looking at its monuments. But sitting quietly beside one of its homes. Listening to the small sounds that belong to a sleeping household. The gentle movement of cloth. The faint crackle of cooling wood. The soft wind outside. The distant city. And the slow, steady breathing of people who have finally finished their work. The night passes without asking anything from them. And somewhere, beyond the darkened doorway, the first hint of morning is already waiting. But it has not arrived yet. For now, the family sleeps. The lamps are nearly dark. The streets are quiet. The stones are cool. And the ancient Roman night continues softly around them. The night is still resting over the city. Inside the small Roman home, the air has grown cooler. The fire has almost disappeared. Only a little warmth remains in the ashes, hidden beneath a thin layer of gray dust. The family sleeps. For a while, there is nothing to hear except breathing. Slow breaths. Quiet breaths. The kind of breathing that comes after a long day of work. Outside, the streets are darker than they were before. A few lamps remain burning in distant doorways. Their light is weak. It touches the stones and then disappears. The city has not completely stopped. Rome rarely became completely silent. Somewhere, a person is still walking. Somewhere, a cart is being moved. Somewhere, a guard is awake. Somewhere, another household is settling down. But inside this home, the night belongs to sleep. And for a few hours, no one needs to carry water. No one needs to sweep the floor. No one needs to prepare bread. No one needs to open a shop. No one needs to tend the animals. All of those things can wait. The ancient Roman family has entered that quiet part of the day when the body is allowed to become heavy. Perhaps one person wakes briefly. A little movement. A hand touches the blanket. The sleeper turns. Then the room becomes still again. This simple moment would have happened countless times across the Roman world. In a crowded apartment in Rome. In a farmhouse in Italy. In a village beside a river. In a house near the coast. In a military settlement far from Italy. The empire was enormous, but night came everywhere. And with night came the same need for rest. Morning would eventually return. But not yet. For now, we can let the hours move slowly. There is something peaceful about imagining how little changed during these quiet hours. The wooden door remained closed. The clay vessels remained where they had been placed. The sandals waited near the sleeping places. The tools rested against a wall. A basket sat empty. A cooking pot cooled beside the ashes. Nothing needed to be arranged. Nothing needed to be hurried. The household simply existed. And as the darkness continues, perhaps we can move gently through another part of Roman family life. We can imagine the same home in daylight. We can see the people who live there. We can notice the objects they touched each day. A small wooden stool. A clay bowl. A woven basket. A storage jar. A simple lamp. A knife used for food. A piece of cloth. A broom. A cup. These objects were ordinary. They did not need to be beautiful. They needed to work. The ancient household depended on useful things. A broken bowl could be a problem. A damaged tool could delay work. A leaking container could waste water. A torn garment needed repair. A cracked roof needed attention. There were few objects that could simply be thrown away without thought. Material life was different. People repaired. People reused. People stored. People adapted. A piece of cloth might be patched. A wooden object might be fixed. A broken pottery vessel might be used for another purpose. The value of an object often came from the labor required to make it. Clay had to be collected. Wood had to be cut. Metal had to be shaped. Thread had to be spun. Fabric had to be woven. Every ordinary household object carried someone's work within it. And so the family home was also a place filled with quiet evidence of labor. A bowl meant someone had worked with clay. A linen garment meant someone had prepared fibers and woven them. A loaf of bread meant grain had been grown, harvested, ground, mixed, and baked. A wooden stool meant a tree had been cut and shaped. Nothing appeared by magic. Everything came through human hands. This was especially clear in poor households. When resources were limited, people knew exactly how much work was contained inside an object. A child might be told to take care of a cup because replacing it was difficult. A worker might repair a sandal rather than buy another. A family might save pieces of cloth for later use. The household was a place of careful attention. Not always because people were especially patient. Simply because they had to be. Morning will come. And when it does, the first person awake may again reach toward the ashes. Perhaps the fire can be revived. A little dry material. A little breath. A small spark. Then a faint glow. The kitchen begins to wake. This is one of the oldest rhythms of settled life. Fire before breakfast. Warmth before work. Smoke rising before the sun is fully visible. The smell of burning wood spreads through the house. Someone coughs softly. Someone opens a doorway. Cool morning air enters. The contrast is pleasant. Inside, there is warmth. Outside, the stone is cool. The sky is pale. The city is beginning again. A mother may be preparing food. A father may be getting dressed. A child may still be sleeping. A servant may already be working. The exact details depend on the household. But the pattern remains familiar. One person wakes another. One person prepares food. Another carries water. Someone checks the animals. Someone gathers tools. Someone thinks about the day ahead. The family does not need a formal meeting. The household simply begins moving. In Roman society, families could be complicated. Marriage was important. Children were important. Inheritance mattered. Names mattered. Property mattered. Family connections could stretch across several generations. But behind all of these formal ideas were people living together. A husband might worry about his wife's health. A mother might worry about a child. A father might worry about money. A daughter might worry about a marriage arranged by relatives. A son might worry about finding work. A grandparent might worry about growing older. These worries were not unique to one class. They appeared in different forms across the household. And so the Roman family was not simply an institution. It was a collection of people trying to live through ordinary days. Marriage could change the structure of a household. A young woman might leave her parents' home. A young man might bring a wife into his household. Families could negotiate marriages based on social position, property, alliances, and expectations. For wealthy families, marriage could be closely connected with status and inheritance. For ordinary families, practical concerns were often just as important. A household needed another person who could share work. A family needed stability. Children could become part of the future of the household. But the emotional experience of marriage varied from person to person. Ancient people were not simply symbols in a family tree. They had preferences. They had fears. They formed attachments. They became annoyed. They missed people. They became tired. They cared for one another. Their lives were human in the same quiet way that ours are human. Still, the social rules around them could be very different. Roman women lived within a society where men generally held greater legal and political power. Their lives depended greatly on family status, wealth, location, and the period in which they lived. Some women managed large Some worked. Others lived under strict expectations within their families. The world was not the same for everyone. But within the walls of a household, women often carried an enormous amount of daily responsibility. Food, clothing, children, storage, servants, household rituals, textiles, supplies. The quiet work of keeping a home functioning could occupy much of the day. Much of this work left no monument. No statue was raised for the person who spent years preparing meals. No inscription recorded every garment washed. No historian described every child put to bed. Yet these actions helped hold households together. A family could not simply exist without someone performing these tasks. And so we might imagine the morning beginning with this quiet work. A woman sits near the doorway. She has a basket beside her. Inside are pieces of cloth. Perhaps she is repairing a garment. The thread moves through the fabric. In and out. In and out. The motion is slow. The light is still soft. Nearby, a child watches. The child may eventually learn the same skill. Not today perhaps. But one day. This is how household knowledge moved from one generation to another. Hands teaching hands. Eyes watching. Simple instructions repeated. A garment is repaired. A basket is woven. A loaf is shaped. A child learns. A family continues. Elsewhere, another household is beginning its morning. This one may be larger. The house may have several rooms. There may be a courtyard with columns. There may be painted walls. There may be a garden. Servants move quietly through the space. Water is carried. Food is prepared. Beds are arranged. The household has more resources, but it still has work. Large homes required many hands. The floors needed cleaning. Clothes needed washing. Food needed preparing. Guests might arrive. Animals needed care. Storage rooms needed attention. The larger the household, the more complicated its daily rhythm could become. A wealthy Roman family might have many people living under the same household authority. Some were relatives. Others were enslaved people. Some might be freed later. The ancient Roman system of slavery was deeply embedded in society. Enslaved people performed domestic work, agricultural labor, craft work, and many other forms of labor. Their experiences varied, but their lack of freedom was fundamental. For many households, their labor made comfortable life possible. A quiet room, a prepared meal, a clean garment, or a maintained garden could depend upon the work of people who had little control over their own lives. And so when we imagine the peaceful surface of a Roman household, it is important to remember the people whose labor existed beneath it. The household was not peaceful for everyone. Some people rested because others worked. Some people ate because others prepared the food. Some people enjoyed comfort because others carried heavy burdens. This was part of Roman society. Still, our story remains close to ordinary daily life. A servant wakes before the household. The work begins early. Water is carried. Ashes are removed. Food is prepared. Clothes are gathered. The servant may have little time to sit. The sun rises higher. The day becomes warmer. The work continues. In a busy city, servants might carry messages. They might accompany children. They might shop at markets. They might prepare rooms. They might care for animals. They might clean. They might cook. The work could be repetitive. and repetition could make the hours feel long. The Roman day had no modern conveniences to shorten these tasks. Water had to be moved physically. Food had to be processed by hand. Clothing required extensive labor. Cooking required fuel. Heating required fuel. Lighting required oil. The household consumed many hours simply maintaining itself. This was true in different forms across the empire. In a rural home, the work was tied to land. In a city home, it was tied to trade and household maintenance. Either way, daily life required effort. The sun climbs. Morning becomes midday. The stone floor grows warmer. The courtyard is bright. The shadows become narrow. People seek shade. The family members who can pause do so. Someone sits near a wall. Someone drinks water. Someone eats a little bread. Someone closes their eyes. The sound of the city continues around them. Perhaps there is a fountain nearby. Water falls into a basin. The sound is repetitive, almost hypnotic. A person could listen to it for a long time. Water. Stone. Footsteps. Water. Stone. Footsteps. The rhythm continues. In Roman cities, public fountains were important sources of water. People came carrying jars and vessels. They waited. They filled them. Then they carried the water home. The weight increased with every step. A full vessel could be heavy. Women and servants often carried water for household use, though the exact arrangements varied. A person might make the journey more than once in a day. Water was not simply something that appeared when needed. It had to be brought, stored, used carefully. This affected everything: cooking, washing, drinking, cleaning, bathing. The household needed to think about water. And so a Roman morning could include the sound of footsteps carrying jars through the streets. A person walks. The vessel moves slightly. Water inside shifts. The person adjusts their grip. Another street. Another doorway. Home again. A small amount of water is poured into a basin. Some is saved. Some is used for cooking. Some for washing. Nothing is wasted casually. The work is ordinary. But it repeats day after day. Perhaps a child accompanies the adult. The child watches. One day, the child will carry the jar. The pattern continues. The Roman household was also a place where children learned their place within the family. A child was not simply left to grow independently. Children were watched, corrected, taught, expected to behave properly. The family name carried importance. Behavior could affect the reputation of the household. For wealthy families especially, children might be trained in manners, speech, education, and social responsibilities. A boy might be expected to become a citizen who could manage property or participate in public life. A girl might be prepared for marriage and household responsibilities. But actual experiences differed widely. Some children worked from an early age. Some received extensive education. Some lived in comfort. Others knew hunger and physical hardship. The Roman world contained all of these childhoods. Imagine now a small child sitting beside a doorway. The child has a piece of bread. A dog is nearby. The morning sun reaches the edge of the street. The child watches people pass. A merchant carries cloth. A man carries a basket. Two women speak quietly. A donkey stops. Someone calls from a shop. The child does not understand the whole world. The child only sees movement. The street is enormous. The doorway feels safe. A familiar adult is nearby. That is enough. For a small child, the ancient world is not an empire. It is a handful of familiar faces. The smell of bread. The sound of sandals. The warmth of sunlight. The shadow of a wall. A cup of water. A sleeping place. A parent's voice. This small world grows larger slowly. As the child becomes older, the streets become familiar. The market becomes familiar. The local workshop becomes familiar. The child begins to understand money, work, family obligations, social rules, religion, marriage, death, the seasons. Life becomes more complicated, but childhood begins simply. And so the household is also a place where a person first learns what the world is. The family teaches names. The family teaches habits. The family teaches food. The family teaches work. The family teaches stories. The family teaches silence. The family teaches what happens when the day ends. And every evening, the same doorway waits. The sun lowers. The air cools. The household returns. The Roman family moves toward night again. Perhaps today has been difficult. Perhaps someone is sick. Perhaps a harvest is smaller than expected. Perhaps a tool has broken. Perhaps money is short. Perhaps someone has returned safely. Perhaps there is simply nothing unusual to report. Most days were probably like this. Not remarkable. Not recorded. Just lived. And that is where we can remain for a while. The ordinary. The quiet. The repeated. The small movements that make up a human life. By evening, a tired worker may sit outside the house. The stone beneath him has cooled. He removes his sandals. His feet are dusty. He looks toward the street. There is still some light in the sky. A neighbor passes. They exchange a few words. Nothing important. Then the neighbor continues walking. The worker remains seated. Perhaps he is too tired to move immediately. The day has taken its strength. He sits beneath the fading light. A breeze moves through the street. Somewhere nearby, food is cooking. The smell reaches him. He hears a child laughing. Then the laughter becomes quieter. A woman calls someone inside. A door closes. The sky darkens. The worker finally stands. He enters his home. Inside, the meal is almost ready. There is warmth. There is food. There are familiar faces. The day is nearly over. This is the kind of evening that could happen again and again. A simple ending to a simple day. And yet, within these repeated evenings, entire lives passed. Children became adults. Adults became grandparents. Young workers became old workers. Homes changed. Walls were repaired. Doors were replaced. Families moved. Names continued. Years passed. The empire itself changed around them. New rulers appeared. New laws were announced. Wars happened far away. Trade routes shifted. Taxes changed. But the household often remained focused on immediate things. Enough grain. Enough oil. Enough wood. Enough water. A roof that did not leak. Clothing that still held together. A healthy child. A safe journey. A good harvest. These were the concerns of ordinary people. The large events of history could affect them deeply. But most of the time, those events arrived indirectly. Through prices. Through taxes. Through a missing relative. Through a new official. Through soldiers passing along a road. Through changes in trade. Through food becoming more expensive. History entered the household quietly. It did not always arrive with trumpets. Sometimes it arrived as an empty storage jar. Sometimes as a letter. Sometimes as a new coin. Sometimes as a stranger at the door. And sometimes, nothing happened at all. The family simply continued. The night returns. The lamps are lit. The meal is finished. The household becomes quiet. A child is sent to sleep. Someone washes a bowl. Someone closes a shutter. Someone checks the door. The final tasks are done. The day is placed aside. And again, the Roman family lies down. The same ceiling is above them. The same walls surround them. The same darkness settles across the street. Perhaps the wind is cooler tonight. Perhaps rain can be heard against the roof. Perhaps the air is dry and still. Whatever the weather, the household waits for morning. For now, there is nothing more to do. The body has worked. The mind has carried enough thoughts. The hands have completed their tasks. The feet have walked enough streets. The family rests. Outside, the Roman world stretches far beyond the doorway. But inside, there is only this small room. A little darkness. A little warmth. A quiet breath. And the slow passing of another night. The hours move without hurry. The ancient city sleeps in pieces. One room becomes quiet. Then another. A shop closes. A workshop darkens. A courtyard empties. A street grows still. A fountain continues to murmur. The water does not care about the hour. It simply falls. Again. And again. And again. The sound continues beneath the darkness. Perhaps someone hears it from an open window. Perhaps it becomes part of their dreams. The family sleeps. The fountain continues. The wind moves gently along the walls. And somewhere beyond the city, fields wait beneath the night sky. The crops stand quietly. The animals rest. The roads are empty. The river moves slowly. Tomorrow, people will return to all of these places. But tonight, everything is waiting. And so we can leave the household here for a little while longer. Let the fire become ash. Let the lamp grow dim. Let the streets become quiet. Let the family sleep beneath the ancient roof. The morning will come when it is ready. Until then, there is only darkness, warmth, and rest. The night has passed slowly. The darkness that rested over the Roman streets is beginning to thin. There is still no bright sunlight. Only a soft gray light beyond the rooftops. The household remains quiet. For a little while longer, everyone is asleep. The cooking fire has become a bed of pale ashes. The clay vessels are cool. The sandals remain beside the sleeping places. A small lamp has gone dark. Outside, the first birds begin to make their morning sounds. One call. Then another. The city has not yet fully awakened. But the day is already beginning. Soon, someone will rise. Perhaps it is a mother. Perhaps an older servant. Perhaps a farmer who has learned to wake with the light. The person sits up slowly. The room is cool. The floor is cool beneath the feet. A hand reaches for a garment. The day begins without ceremony. There is no great announcement. Only movement. A quiet cough. A piece of cloth being folded. A wooden door opening. Cool air entering. The Roman family wakes again. And with this new morning, we can stay close to the people whose lives filled the streets, houses, farms, workshops, and riverbanks of the ancient world. There is something reassuring in the repetition. Yesterday began this way. The day before probably did too. Tomorrow will likely begin in much the same manner. The same tasks return. The same objects wait. The same streets receive the first footsteps. Life is not always a series of new events. Often it is a circle. The family knows the circle. Morning. Work. Food. Eat. Rest. Evening. Sleep. Then morning again. For an ancient Roman, the familiar rhythm could become almost invisible. But to us, looking backward through the quiet distance of time, every small movement becomes interesting. A hand opening a wooden shutter. A woman carrying a water jar. A child rubbing sleepy eyes. A worker tying a sandal. A farmer checking the weather. A baker preparing grain. These moments were not considered history by the people living them. They were simply life. The morning light enters the house. It touches the wall. It moves slowly across the floor. Dust becomes visible in the light. Tiny particles rise and fall. Someone sweeps. The broom makes a soft scraping sound. Again and again. Across the floor. Into the corner. Toward the doorway. The work is simple. But even simple work takes time. The person sweeping may have done this many thousands of times. The same movement. The same corner. The same wall. The same dust. There is something almost meditative about such work. The Roman home needed constant attention. Dust came in from the street. Sandals carried dirt inside. Animals left traces. Food spilled. Ash settled. Cloth gathered dust. Without regular cleaning, a household quickly became uncomfortable. So the broom moved each morning. A quiet sound beneath the waking voices. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. Pause. The day becomes brighter. Someone begins preparing breakfast. Bread is brought out. Perhaps there are olives. Perhaps a little cheese. Perhaps fruit. Perhaps a simple porridge. The meal depends on what the household can afford. Food in the Roman world was not equally available to everyone. A wealthy family could enjoy a much wider variety. A poor family might rely heavily on grains and whatever inexpensive foods were available. Still, bread remains one of the quiet foundations of the diet. Grain had to travel through many hands before it became food. Farmers planted it. Workers harvested it. Grain was transported. It was stored. It was ground. Flour was prepared. Dough was made. Bread was baked. Then someone carried it home. When a family broke bread in the morning, it was touching the end of a long chain of work. The bread itself was ordinary. But the effort behind it was enormous. In a small kitchen, the smell of warm grain fills the air. A child reaches toward the food. An adult moves the hand away gently. The meal is divided. Everyone receives a portion. The household eats. No one needs to speak much. Morning hunger makes conversation unnecessary. Outside, the streets are becoming louder. Rome wakes by layers. First the households. Then the shops. then the workshops, then the markets, then the larger movement of the city. A cart passes. The wheels make a rough sound against the stone. A man calls to someone. A woman carries a basket. Two workers walk together. An animal refuses to move. Someone laughs softly. A door closes. The city grows louder. But within each doorway, there is still a family world. A private rhythm. A small arrangement of responsibilities. One person leaves for work. Another stays behind. A child goes to learn. A servant begins household duties. An older relative remains in the shade. The household divides its day. This division could depend on age and status. Children had different duties from adults. Men and women often had different expected roles. Enslaved people had duties imposed upon them. Wealthy families could delegate more work. Poor families had to do more themselves. The ancient Roman household was not equal. But it was interconnected. One person's work affected another person's day. If the water was not carried, cooking became difficult. If the bread was not prepared, breakfast changed. If a worker did not return, the household noticed. If a child became ill, the entire rhythm of the home could change. This was especially true when illness entered the house. Ancient people understood many illnesses differently from how we understand them now. Medical knowledge existed. Doctors practiced. Herbal remedies were used. Treatments were attempted. But many diseases were difficult to control. A fever could become frightening. A wound could become dangerous. A cough could linger. A child might become sick quickly. The household could become quiet. A person who had been working yesterday might be lying still today. Food would be prepared differently. Someone would bring water. Someone would watch. Someone would wait. There was often little else to do. Illness changed the atmosphere of a home. The normal sounds became softer. A family member might sit beside the sick person. The room might be kept warm. A cloth might be placed on the forehead. A drink might be prepared. Someone might whisper a prayer. Someone might call for a healer. And while the sick person rested, the household continued around them. The fire still needed tending. Children still needed food. Water still needed carrying. Work still needed doing. This was one of the difficult realities of ancient family life. There was little separation between care and daily labor. A person could be caring for someone while also preparing a meal. A mother could watch a sick child while grinding grain. A servant could bring water while carrying out another task. A household did not stop simply because someone was unwell. It adjusted. It became slower. It became more careful. Then, if the person recovered, life gradually returned to normal. If they did not, the household changed permanently. Death was a familiar part of Roman life. People lived shorter lives on average than people in many modern societies. Childhood was especially dangerous. Many children did not survive to adulthood. Families knew this possibility. Yet knowing that death existed did not make losing someone easy. A home could suddenly become quiet. A sleeping place might remain empty. A garment might still hang where someone had left it. A cup might remain unused. A name could become a memory. The Romans had many customs surrounding death and mourning. Funeral practices varied according to period, place, status, and family. Some bodies were cremated. Others were buried. Families remembered the dead. Names could be preserved. Memorials could be made. But inside the home, grief could be much simpler. A person is gone. The household feels different. A voice is missing. A place at the meal is empty. The ordinary rhythm has been interrupted. And slowly, over time, the family learns to continue. This quiet cycle of birth, childhood, adulthood, aging, and death shaped every Roman household. A family might feel ancient even to itself. Grandparents remembered people who had already died. Parents remembered their own childhood. Children knew stories about relatives they had never met. The past could reach across generations. Names were carried forward. Objects were kept. Family traditions were repeated. A household could become a small container of memory. Perhaps an old piece of jewelry belonged to a grandmother. Perhaps a wooden chest had belonged to a parent. Perhaps a family story was told every year. Perhaps a small household shrine held figures associated with ancestors and domestic spirits. These things helped people feel connected to those who had come before. The Roman world placed great importance on family lineage, especially among wealthy families. But even ordinary people remembered their relatives. A person might speak of a father, a mother, a brother, a daughter, a husband, a wife. The words themselves were simple. The feelings behind them were not. Now the morning is fully awake. The household has become active. Someone carries water. Someone prepares clothing. Someone leaves for work. The city is bright. The stone streets are warm. The sound of labor begins again. A workshop opens. Inside, the tools are waiting. A craftsman picks up a hammer. The first strike is quiet. Then another. Metal begins to change shape. The work is repetitive. Strike. Turn. Strike. Turn. A different worker may be grinding something. The sound is low and steady. Nearby, a potter handles clay. Hands press into soft material. The shape changes. A vessel begins to appear. The work requires patience. The clay cannot be hurried. A small mistake can ruin the shape. The craftsman begins again. In another street, a tailor or textile worker handles thread. Cloth is stretched. Needles move. Fibers are pulled. The work can continue for hours. The city is full of hands. Everywhere, people are making things. And many of these workers are supporting families. A craftsman earns money. The money buys food. Food supports the household. The household allows the worker to continue. The cycle continues. In the Roman economy, many people worked in trades. There were bakers, potters, metal workers, carpenters, builders, leather workers, weavers, dyers, merchants, and many others. Some worked independently. Some worked in workshops. Some were enslaved. Some were freed. Some belonged to professional associations. Some worked on farms. Some traveled. Others spent their entire lives near the same street. A family could become associated with a particular trade. A father might teach a son. A mother might teach daughters textile work. Skills could remain inside the family. The workshop and the household could become closely connected. Imagine a family living above a small shop. The lower space is filled with tools and goods. The upper rooms contain sleeping places. The sounds of work rise through the house. During the day, customers arrive. At night, the shop closes. The family remains above it. The smell of the work becomes part of the home. Wood, leather, metal, flour, clay. Depending on the trade, the entire household may live surrounded by its occupation. There is little separation between work and family life. A child grows up watching the trade. The child hears the tools. The child knows the customers. The child learns which materials are valuable. Eventually, the child may begin helping. Years later, the child may take over. The same shop can pass through generations. This is one of the quieter ways families preserved continuity. Not through grand monuments. Through skills. A method of shaping clay. A way of cutting leather. A recipe for bread. A pattern for cloth. A technique for repairing tools. Knowledge stored in the hands. The Roman family could therefore be a school without classrooms. Children learned by being present. They watched. They listened. They copied. They made mistakes. They tried again. And slowly, the work became familiar. Outside the city, farming families followed another rhythm. The land determined much of the schedule. At dawn, workers entered the fields. The soil could be dry, or damp, or heavy. The weather mattered constantly. A farmer could not control the sky. Rain could help. Rain could also damage. Too little water could threaten crops. Too much could destroy them. Harvest time could bring long hours. The entire family might participate. Children could carry small loads. Adults handled heavier work. Older relatives might help with sorting or preparing food. Animals worked too. Oxen pulled. Donkeys carried. Sheep grazed. Chickens moved through the yard. A farm was not simply a field. It was an entire living system. The household woke early because the animals could not wait. Someone had to feed them. Someone had to check them. Someone had to bring water. The work began before the heat became strong. By midday, the sun could be exhausting. The family might retreat to shade. Food would be eaten simply. Bread, olives, cheese, vegetables, whatever was available. Then work would resume when the heat softened. In the evening, the family returned. Dust covered their feet. Clothing carried the smell of the field. Hands were tired. But there was satisfaction in completing necessary work. A harvest brought relief. A repaired fence brought relief. A healthy animal brought relief. Much of ancient life was measured through these small successes. The roof still holds. The jar is still full. The harvest is safe. The child is healthy. The animal has returned. The fire burns. The family has enough food for tonight. These were quiet forms of security. They could disappear quickly. But when they were present, they gave people peace. The Roman countryside stretched far beyond the crowded streets. There were villas, small farms, villages, roadside settlements, fishing communities, river towns. People lived close to the land. The sounds were different there. Less shouting. More birds. More wind. The movement of animals. The creaking of carts. The sound of tools. The distant call of another worker. At night, the countryside could be much darker than the city. Without the lights of many homes, the sky would seem enormous. Stars would fill the darkness. A family might sit outside after dinner. The air would cool. The day's heat would leave the walls. Someone might repair a tool. Someone might spin thread. Children might listen to an older relative. The work would be slow. Conversation would come and go. There was no need to hurry. Then everyone would go inside. The household would sleep. The same stars would remain above the roof. In a coastal village, the rhythm might be shaped by the sea. Fishermen could leave early. Boats were checked. Nets were repaired. The water was watched. A family might wait for someone to return. The sea could provide food and income. But it could also bring uncertainty. Weather could change quickly. A fisherman might return late. Someone might stand near the shore waiting. The Roman family knew many forms of waiting. Waiting for a traveler. Waiting for a harvest. Waiting for a letter. Waiting for a child to return. Waiting for illness to pass. Waiting for rain. Waiting for a ship. Waiting for morning. Waiting was part of life. And often, nothing could be done except wait. A person sits. The hours move. The light changes. Eventually, something happens. The door opens. The traveler returns. The rain begins. The ship appears. The child comes home. Or the day ends without the expected event. Then everyone sleeps. This is another quiet feature of ancient life. There was less control over distance. Messages traveled slowly. A person could leave and become unreachable for a long time. Letters required messengers. Journeys required roads, ships, animals, and weather. Families sometimes lived with uncertainty. A son serving far away. A husband traveling for trade. A relative visiting another province. The household waited. And when the traveler returned, there might be a quiet moment at the doorway. No grand ceremony. Just recognition. A familiar face. A hand placed on a shoulder. A question. Are you well? Have you eaten? How was the journey? Then the person enters. The family adjusts again. A sleeping place is prepared. Food is brought. Clothes are changed. The journey becomes part of the household story. This kind of return happened throughout the empire. The roads connected people. But they also separated them. A journey that might seem manageable on a map could take many days. The traveler carried only what was necessary. Water. Food. Clothing. Money. Perhaps a letter. Perhaps goods for trade. The family at home could only wait. And while they waited, ordinary life continued. The bread still needed baking. The field still needed tending. The shop still needed opening. The children still needed care. The household did not pause completely. It simply carried one missing person within its daily rhythm. Even in a large empire, most people spent much of their lives close to home. A familiar street could contain almost everything they needed. A market. A fountain. A workshop. A shrine. A neighbor's home. A small place to buy food. A place to work. A place to rest. The world beyond remained distant. The family knew it existed. But they lived here. Here, where the stones were familiar. Here, where the same voices returned every morning. Here, where the same sunlight entered the courtyard. Here, where the same cooking pot hung near the fire. The ordinary became a kind of shelter. And now the afternoon is approaching. The sun is high. The streets are bright. The workers are tired. A Roman family has already lived through many hours of the day. The morning meal is long gone. Water has been carried. Work has been completed and resumed. The heat has settled over the city. A person sits beneath shade. For a moment, the world becomes still. The distant sounds blur together. A fountain. A cart. A voice. A bird. The wind. The person closes their eyes. Just for a little while. There is nothing dramatic in this pause. It is simply the body asking for rest. The ancient Roman world was full of these pauses. And if we listen closely, they may be some of the quietest moments of all. A worker resting against a warm wall. A mother sitting beside a sleeping child. A farmer under an olive tree. A fisherman on a wooden boat. A servant waiting in a shaded courtyard. A merchant sitting behind his goods. An old man watching the street. They are all waiting for the heat to soften. Waiting for the next task. Waiting for evening. And slowly, as the afternoon moves toward dusk, the shadows begin to lengthen. The day is not finished. But its hardest heat is beginning to fade. The streets will soon become gentler. Workers will start returning. Doors will open. Fires will be lit. Food will be prepared. And once again, the Roman household will gather itself together for the evening. The same quiet rhythm is waiting. The afternoon light is beginning to soften. The hard brightness of the day has slowly moved toward the western sky. Shadows stretch farther across the stone. The walls no longer hold quite so much heat. For the people who have been working since early morning, this change is welcome. The day has taken much of their strength. Now the streets begin to change again. A craftsman puts away his tools. A shopkeeper gathers the last goods from outside the doorway. A farmer looks toward the road. A servant carries one final vessel of water. Children begin returning home. The city does not become quiet immediately. It simply becomes slower. The Roman family is gathering again. This is one of the most familiar moments in any household. The workday is loosening its grip. People are returning to the place where they belong. A door opens. Someone enters. Dust is shaken from a garment. Sandals are removed. A basket is placed on the floor. A tired person sits down. For a few moments, nobody needs to do anything. The evening has arrived. The air is cooler. A little breeze moves through the doorway. The smell of cooking begins to drift from nearby homes. Bread. Smoke. Olives. Herbs. Perhaps fish. Perhaps vegetables simmering slowly in a clay pot. The whole neighborhood seems to be preparing for the same simple transition. From work to rest. From sunlight to darkness. From noise to quiet. A Roman household could be busiest in these hours. The family needed to prepare food. Clothes might need to be cleaned. Tools needed to be stored. Animals needed attention. Children needed washing. Water needed to be divided. The fire needed to be fed. Yet compared with the middle of the day, there was a gentler feeling in the air. The sun was lower. The shadows were longer. The body was tired. There was no reason to rush. A woman sits near the cooking area. She moves slowly. A knife cuts through vegetables. The pieces fall into a bowl. A hand reaches for herbs. A pot is stirred. The fire makes a soft crackling sound. The room smells warm. Someone brings bread. Someone carries a small jar. A child watches from nearby. The child has already spent much of the day moving through the streets. Now the child is tired too. The household becomes a place of shelter. Outside, the city still moves. Inside, the pace slows. This movement between public life and private life was important in Roman society. The streets belonged to everyone. The home belonged to the household. A person could spend the day among strangers and return at night to familiar voices. The doorway created a boundary. Beyond it were markets, workshops, temples, roads, neighbors, animals, merchants, officials, and crowds. Inside were family members, household objects, food, clothing, sleeping places, and familiar routines. The home was not always peaceful. Families argued. People became frustrated. Children misbehaved. Money caused worry. Illness caused fear. Relationships could be complicated. But the household remained the place where most of ordinary life happened. And as evening settles over the Roman street, we can imagine a family sitting together after the day's work. There is no need for a large meal. Perhaps the food is placed in the center. Bread is broken. Olives are passed. A little cheese is shared. The pot is warm. The fire is low. People eat slowly. One person speaks. Another listens. A child asks a question. An older person answers. The conversation fades. Someone becomes sleepy. The meal continues. The family may not have eaten together every evening in exactly the same way. Life was too varied for that. But the evening meal remained an important part of household life. Food was not only nourishment. It was also a moment of connection. People saw one another. They exchanged news. They noticed who was missing. They noticed who looked tired. They noticed who was ill. They noticed how quickly a child was growing. A meal could be simple and still carry meaning. The bread might be plain. The room might be small. The bowls might be ordinary. But familiar people were gathered together. That was enough. In a wealthy household, an evening meal could be much more elaborate. There could be several courses. There could be servants moving between rooms. There could be guests. There could be couches for reclining. There could be music. There could be wine. There could be conversation about business, politics, literature, or family matters. Roman elite dining could be elaborate. But we will remain with the quieter side of life. The ordinary family. The tired worker. The child who has eaten enough. The older relative who is already thinking about sleep. The servant cleaning the last bowl. The person sitting near the fading fire. There is a peaceful simplicity in this kind of evening. The day has almost finished. The work has been done. The family has food. The house is secure. The night is approaching. Nothing else is required. Perhaps one person steps outside. The street is now cooler. The sky has become dark blue. The first stars appear. A neighbor is sitting near a doorway. Someone is walking home. A small lamp burns inside another house. The sound of conversation moves through the street. A child laughs. Then a door closes. The sound becomes softer. The Roman city at night could still be active. Some shops and businesses continued late. Some people worked through the evening. Some roads remained busy. But in residential areas, many families gradually settled. The darkness encouraged rest. Oil lamps were useful, but oil costs something. A household might not keep every room brightly lit. Instead, a small lamp provided enough light for a particular task. The flame flickered. Shadows moved across the wall, A person's hands appeared and disappeared in the warm light. The room beyond remained dark. This low light gave the home a very different feeling from the bright afternoon. Everything became softer. Edges disappeared. Voices became quieter. The world seemed smaller. A person might repair clothing by lamplight. Someone might prepare a final meal. Someone might read or write if the household had access to such skills. A scribe might work late. A merchant might count money. But many people simply rested. There was little reason to remain awake for long after the day's work. Sleep was necessary. And sleep in the ancient world was often less private than we might imagine. Large households could have several people sharing spaces. Poor families might have very limited room. Children might sleep near parents. Servants could sleep in areas connected with their work. In crowded apartment buildings, neighbors were close. Voices traveled through walls. Footsteps could be heard. A baby crying somewhere could wake another household. A dog might bark. Someone might cough. A door might open. The ancient city was not always silent. Even at night, human life continued around the sleeper. Yet eventually the sounds became familiar. A person learned the neighborhood. They knew which house made noise. They knew which animals moved at night. They knew when a nearby worker returned. Familiar sounds became part of the background. The household could sleep through them. A Roman apartment might be crowded and uncomfortable. Some apartment buildings were several stories high. Upper rooms could be reached by stairs. The lower floors were often more desirable. Higher rooms could be smaller, hotter, and less convenient. Fire was a serious danger in crowded urban areas. Cooking and lighting both depended on flame. Buildings were often made from materials that could burn. A small fire could become dangerous. People therefore lived with risks that were simply part of their environment. Yet most nights passed quietly. Most families woke the next morning. Most fires were controlled. Most lamps were extinguished. Most doors remained standing. And so, as we imagine the household at night, we do not need to imagine constant danger. We can simply imagine ordinary darkness. The lamp burns. The family speaks softly. The child yawns. Someone closes the shutters. The air cools. The street grows quiet. The house settles. A person lies down. The blanket is pulled closer. Sleep comes slowly. Beyond the city, another household is following the same rhythm. On a farm, the animals have been fed. The tools are stored. The door is closed. A lamp burns near the sleeping area. The family is tired from the fields. The walls are cool. Outside, insects move through the darkness. The wind passes over the crops. The farm is quiet. A person may wake once during the night to check an animal. Then sleep returns. Near the coast, a fisherman has returned. The boat is tied. The nets have been placed aside. The catch has been cleaned. The family has eaten. The smell of salt remains on the clothing. The fisherman lies down. Tomorrow will bring another early morning. But tonight, the sea is dark. The waves continue. The household sleeps. In another place, a merchant's family lives beside a busy road. The merchant has returned late. His feet are sore. His hands smell of goods. He has spent the day speaking with customers. Now he counts the money once. Then again. He stores it. He knows tomorrow will bring more work. But for tonight, the account is finished. He closes the container. He washes his hands. He eats. Then he rests. The house becomes quiet. Farther away, in a rural village, a family prepares for winter. They inspect stored grain. They check jars. They repair clothing. They make sure the roof is sound. The colder months will require preparation. Ancient households depended heavily on seasonal planning. Food could not always be obtained fresh. People preserved what they could. Grain could be stored. Olives could be preserved. Wine could be stored. Certain foods could be dried. Meat could be preserved through different methods. The household needed to think ahead. A good harvest provided security. A poor harvest created worry. The family therefore lived with the seasons. Spring brought planting. Summer brought heat. Autumn brought harvesting. Winter brought cold and different kinds of work. The rhythm was familiar. People learned to expect it. A child growing up on a farm would learn the seasons almost without being taught. The smell of wet soil. The appearance of new plants. The ripening of fruit. The heat of summer. The first cold morning. The need for fire. The need for heavier clothing. The seasons were part of the household calendar. In the city, the rhythm was less tied to fields but still noticeable. Food prices could change. Markets could become busier. Certain fruits appeared at certain times. Festivals arrived. Religious observances shaped parts of the year. Families prepared for them. They cleaned. They cooked. They made offerings. They visited relatives. They rested. The Roman calendar was filled with festivals and religious occasions. Not every family celebrated them in the same way. But these events interrupted the ordinary pattern. For a day, work might change. The household might prepare special food. People might visit a temple. A procession might pass. The streets might become more crowded. Then the celebration ended. The next morning returned. This was another part of the ancient rhythm. Ordinary days surrounded special days. Most of life remained ordinary. And perhaps this is why the ordinary days deserve our attention. They made up the greater part of a lifetime. A Roman child might attend a festival once. But the child ate breakfast hundreds of times. A merchant might see a great public celebration. But he opened his shop countless mornings. A farmer might visit a temple. But he walked through his fields every day. The ordinary carried most of the weight of life. And the ordinary could be comforting. The same cup. The same bowl. The same doorway. The same bed. The same road. The same familiar faces. These things gave a person a sense of place. Now, as evening deepens, imagine a grandmother sitting beside the household fire. Her hands are old. The work has made them rough. She has lived through many years. She has seen children grow. She has watched people leave. She remembers different houses. Different streets. Different harvests. Perhaps she remembers when the city was smaller. Perhaps she remembers her own mother. She might tell a story. Not a great story. Just something from long ago. A neighbor. A wedding. A journey. A difficult winter. A good harvest. A family member who used to sing while working. The child listening may not remember every detail. But the story becomes part of the family. Years later, the child may tell it again. This is how much of human history survives. Not in official records. In memory. A sentence spoken quietly. A name remembered. A habit repeated. A recipe prepared in the same way. A small object kept because it belonged to someone. Families carry the past without always realizing it. The Roman world was full of these private histories. Most of them disappeared. We know only a small portion. The names of emperors survived. The names of generals survived. The names of famous writers survived. But millions of ordinary people left no written record. Their lives were still real. They woke. They worked. They loved. They worried. They became tired. They slept. They raised children. They grew old. Then their children continued. Their names may have disappeared. Their voices are gone. But the pattern of their lives remains visible in fragments. A cooking vessel. A child's toy. A worn threshold. A simple inscription. A grave. A building. A road. A piece of cloth. A tool. These small remains allow us to imagine the people who once touched them. And tonight, we can imagine them quietly. Not as statues. Not as distant figures. But as tired people returning home. A father with dusty sandals. A mother preparing food. A child waiting near the doorway. A servant carrying water. A farmer looking toward the field. A fisherman repairing a net. A merchant closing his shop. A scribe rubbing tired eyes after a long day of writing. Their lives were different. But the body still became tired. The stomach still became hungry. The mind still needed rest. The night still offered darkness. The morning still returned. This is perhaps one of the deepest quiet connections between people separated by centuries. The simple needs remain. Food. Water. Shelter. Warmth. Rest. Company. The Roman household tried to provide these things as best it could. Sometimes successfully. Sometimes poorly. Sometimes with great comfort. Sometimes with hardship. But the effort remained. And as the lamp burns low, the household begins its final preparations for sleep. A bowl is rinsed. A garment is folded. The fire is reduced. The door is checked. The child is settled. Someone says good night. The words are simple. The room becomes darker. The family members move toward their sleeping places. One person lies down. Then another. The house becomes still. Outside, the street has nearly emptied. A few footsteps pass. The sound fades. A fountain continues somewhere nearby. Water moves over stone. A breeze touches the shutters. The city is resting. The Roman Empire is resting in countless small pieces. Farmers. Merchants. Builders. Servants. Children. Old people. Workers. Families. All scattered across roads, farms, villages, ports, and cities. All beneath the same night. Some sleep deeply. Some sleep lightly. Some are uncomfortable. Some are warm. Some are cold. Some have enough food. Some do not. Some are surrounded by family. Some are alone. The ancient world was never one single experience. It was many experiences happening at once. But the night gently covers them all. The lamp in one home goes out. Then another. Then another. A dark window appears. Then another. The city becomes a pattern of darkness and small points of light. Eventually, even those lights disappear. The family sleeps. The household rests. Tomorrow will bring more work. More bread. More water. More footsteps. More heat. More dust. More small worries. More small comforts. But tomorrow has not arrived. Tonight remains. The room is quiet. The air is cool. The last warmth of the fire is fading. A person turns in sleep. A child breathes softly. An older person lies still. Outside, the wind moves through the narrow street. And somewhere beyond the houses, the Roman countryside lies under the same darkness. Fields rest. Animals rest. Trees move gently in the night air. A distant river continues its slow journey. The water does not hurry. It moves around stones. Past fields. Past villages. Toward the sea. It has been moving long before these families arrived. It will continue after their homes are gone. For tonight, though, it passes quietly through the darkness. And beside it, perhaps another family is sleeping. A small house. A low roof. A clay jar near the doorway. A fire reduced to ashes. A few sleeping bodies inside. Nothing remarkable. Nothing that an emperor would notice. Yet this is the quiet world we are visiting. A world built from ordinary days. A world of hands and feet. Of bread and water. Of work and rest. Of family and memory. Of heat and cool evenings. Of tired bodies lying down beneath simple roofs. And as the night deepens once more, the household remains still. The streets are dark. The stones are cool. The lamps are low. The family sleeps. There is nowhere to go for now. Nothing to carry. Nothing to repair. Nothing to harvest. Nothing to sell. Nothing to explain. Only rest. And slowly, gently, another ancient night passes over the Roman world. The Roman night has grown deep again. The streets have become almost empty. A few lamps remain behind wooden shutters, their small flames moving gently in the darkness. Inside the homes, families are sleeping. The sounds of the day have settled. The markets are closed. The workshops are quiet. The baskets have been placed against walls. The tools are resting. The bread has been eaten. The water jars are still. For a few hours, the household needs nothing. It is enough to be warm. Enough to be sheltered. Enough to sleep. And slowly, while the night continues, we can move toward another part of Roman family life. The world of clothing. Clothing was not simply something worn for appearance. It protected the body from cold, sun, dust, and wind. It also showed something about a person's place in society. But for an ordinary family, clothing was first of all work. Fabric required time. Fibers had to be prepared. Thread had to be made. Cloth had to be woven. Garments had to be cut or arranged. Edges had to be finished. Tears had to be repaired. Nothing about this process was quick. A Roman household could contain many hours of quiet textile work. A woman might sit near a doorway with a spindle. The spindle turns. Thread grows longer. The motion is small. The hand moves. The spindle drops. It is caught again. Then the motion repeats. Outside, the city changes. Inside, the thread continues. This work could be done while talking, while watching children, while waiting for food, while sitting beside another person. It could fill empty moments. Cloth was valuable because so much labor went into making it. A garment was therefore not treated carelessly. It could be washed, repaired, patched, folded, stored, passed from one person to another. Children grew. Their clothing could be adjusted. Older garments could be used for other purposes. A worn piece of fabric might become a cloth for cleaning. Nothing had to disappear immediately. The household used what it had. In a poor family, this careful use of clothing was especially important. A person might own only a few garments. The same clothing could be worn again and again. Dust would settle on it. Sweat would soak into it. The sun would fade it. The fabric would become thin. Then it would be repaired. Again. And again. The work of maintaining clothing could seem endless. But it was part of daily life. A Roman morning might therefore begin not only with bread and fire, but with cloth. Someone folds a garment. Someone checks a torn seam. Someone prepares thread. Someone washes a piece of fabric. The sun is useful for drying. The wind helps. A line or simple support holds the cloth. It moves gently in the morning air. White fabric against a pale sky. The scene is quiet. There is nothing dramatic about it. But it is the kind of sight that would have been common. The same could be said of shoes. Roman footwear varied greatly. Sandals were common. Other shoes covered more of the foot. Workers needed practical footwear. Soldiers had their own forms. Wealthier people could have more carefully made shoes. But all footwear became worn. Stone streets were hard. Dust entered. Leather dried. Straps loosened. A sandal needed repair. A worker might sit outside a small workshop while a leather worker repaired a shoe. The smell of leather fills the air. Tools are laid out. The worker watches. A piece of material is cut. A strap is tightened. The repair is finished. The sandal is handed back. The worker puts it on. Then stands. The day continues. Such small repairs were part of the ancient city. A broken object did not necessarily mean the end of its usefulness. People depended on skilled hands. A potter could replace a vessel. A carpenter could repair wood. A leather worker could repair shoes. A metal worker could repair tools. A textile worker could repair clothing. The city was full of people whose work kept other people's lives moving. Many of them lived with their families. Their work shaped their household. A workshop might belong to a family. A trade might pass from father to son. A daughter might help with textile production. Children might grow up surrounded by materials. The sounds of work would become familiar. A hammer striking metal. A knife cutting leather. A shuttle moving through cloth. A potter's hands turning clay. A saw moving through wood. The child hears these sounds every day. Eventually, the sounds become part of memory. Perhaps many years later, the adult would still remember the rhythm. This was how family knowledge traveled. Not through written manuals alone. Through observation. Through repetition. Through being close to the work. The household was a place of apprenticeship. A child could watch an adult work for years. At first, the child might simply stand nearby. Then carry a small object. Then hold a tool. Then perform a simple task. Eventually, the work would become familiar. A trade could become a family identity. A potter's family. A baker's family. A farmer's family. A fisherman's family. A merchant's family. A textile working family. The ancient city was filled with such households. Their names might never become famous, but their work kept the city alive. The baker rose before dawn. The farmer rose before dawn. The fisherman rose before dawn. The worker in a busy workshop rose before dawn. The early morning belonged to people whose labor had to begin before the city became hot. In the warm months, this mattered even more. The sun could become intense. Work that was manageable in the cool morning could become exhausting by midday. So people began early. The first light appeared. The fire was lit. Tools were gathered. The day began. This early rising also shaped family life. Parents could be gone from the home for much of the day. Children remained with other family members. Older relatives might help. Servants might care for younger children in wealthier households. The household had to function even when some members were away. A family was therefore a network of responsibilities. One person left. Another stayed. One person earned. Another prepared. One person carried. Another repaired. The work was shared, even when it was unequal. And in the evening, everyone returned to the same home. This returning mattered. A person could spend 10 hours in a workshop and still think about the meal waiting at home. A farmer could work all day in a field and look forward to the coolness of the household courtyard. A fisherman could return from the water and find familiar faces. The home was a destination. Not grand. Simply familiar. Perhaps there was a favorite corner. A certain place near the wall. A stool. A shaded spot. A sleeping mat. A particular bowl. Small comforts accumulated over time. The ancient world was full of physical hardship. But people still created comfort where they could. A blanket could be comforting. A warm meal could be comforting. Clean clothing could be comforting. A cool courtyard could be comforting. The presence of family could be comforting. A familiar voice could be comforting. These things did not require wealth. Even a poor household could contain small moments of ease. A worker returns after a difficult day. Someone has saved a little food. The person sits. The bowl is placed in front of them. Steam rises. The worker eats slowly. No one asks for anything. For a few minutes, the body is simply fed. That is enough. Then the evening continues. The Roman household was also a place of washing. Cleanliness mattered, though the methods were different from those of later societies. People washed themselves in various ways. Some used basins. Some visited public baths. Some washed specific parts of the body at home. Wealthier households could have more private facilities. Public bathing was a major part of Roman urban culture. Bathhouses could be large and elaborate. They were places for washing, exercise, conversation, and social life. But the ordinary household still needed to manage personal cleanliness. Water had to be carried. A basin had to be filled. A towel or cloth had to be prepared. A person could wash after work. Dust would disappear. Sweat would be removed. The skin would feel cooler. After a long day beneath the sun, this could bring relief. Imagine a worker returning home. The clothing is dusty. The hands are rough. The face is warm. Water is poured into a basin. The worker washes slowly. The water becomes cloudy. A cloth is used. The face is wiped. The hands are cleaned. The person feels lighter. The basin is emptied. The day seems a little less heavy. Then fresh clothing is put on. The evening begins. In larger cities, public baths could become busy social places. People met friends. They talked. They exercised. They washed. But for our quiet journey, we can remain with the household after the person returns from the baths or washing area. The body is clean. The hair is dry. The clothing is comfortable. The family is eating. The lamp is burning. The evening is calm. Outside, the streets continue to darken. This simple movement from dirt to cleanliness was repeated every day by countless people. The Roman world placed importance on bathing, but access varied. Some people had easy access to public facilities. Others had less. A person living in a remote village could not simply walk to a monumental bathhouse. Their washing depended on what water and facilities were available locally. Again, geography shaped daily life. The empire was enormous. A Roman household in Italy was not identical to a household in North Africa. A family in Gaul lived differently from one in Egypt. A coastal home differed from a mountain home. Climate changed. Food changed. Building materials changed. Clothing changed. Local customs changed. Roman culture spread across the empire, but it mixed with older local traditions. Family life therefore had many regional forms. In a warm southern province, a courtyard could be especially important. In colder regions, indoor warmth mattered more. In dry areas, water required careful management. Near rivers, water might be more easily available. Near the sea, fishing could shape the household economy. In agricultural regions, the harvest determined the rhythm of the year. The empire connected these places. But each family remained local. The people in one home knew their own landscape. They knew the smell of their soil. They knew the local weather. They knew which foods appeared in the market. They knew which roads were safe. They knew their neighbors. This sense of place mattered. A family could travel. A merchant could cross provinces. A soldier could serve far away. But home remained tied to a particular landscape. Perhaps it was a hill. A river. A field. A street. A harbor. A village. A courtyard. The Roman family was rooted somewhere. And tonight, as we imagine the household resting again, we can picture that place. Maybe it is a small farm in Italy. The house has thick walls. The roof is simple. There is a courtyard. A few animals sleep nearby. The fields are dark. The family has finished dinner. The fire is low. A child is already asleep. An older man sits outside. The stars are bright. He hears insects. He hears an animal moving. He hears the wind in the trees. Nothing else. The silence is deep. The same family will wake before sunrise. But for now, the farm is still. Or perhaps our household is in a crowded city apartment. The walls are close. The neighbors are nearby. A baby cries somewhere. A door opens. Someone walks across a floor above. The city never becomes fully quiet. Yet inside the household, the family knows these sounds. They have become familiar. A mother puts the child back to sleep. The lamp is turned lower. The room becomes dark again. The baby settles. The parent lies down. Outside, someone walks through the street. The footsteps pass. The city continues. Sleep returns. There are different kinds of quiet. The countryside has a wide quiet. The city has a close quiet. Both can become peaceful. The Roman world contained both. Now imagine a household with several generations. An older grandparent. Two parents. Children. Perhaps an aunt or uncle. Perhaps servants. The rooms are shared. There are many sleeping places. The morning will be crowded. The evening meal will involve many people. Someone is always moving. Someone is always speaking. Someone is always carrying something. Such a household could be noisy. But it could also be warm. Children rarely lacked familiar faces. An older person was rarely completely alone. Work could be shared. Knowledge could be shared. Stories could be shared. The family was a small community. Yet this closeness could also create tension. People could disagree. Generations had different expectations. A young person might want freedom. An older person might expect obedience. A marriage could cause disagreement. Property could cause arguments. Money could become a source of worry. A household was not always peaceful. But after the disagreement, people still had to live together. They still ate. They still worked. They still slept beneath the same roof. Ancient family life was therefore not an endless picture of harmony. It was simply human. There was affection. There was frustration. There was patience. There was anger. There was forgiveness. There was duty. There was habit. The same people could experience all of these feelings within a single day. And when night came, many of them still shared the same home. This is why the household remains such an interesting place to explore. The Roman Empire can seem enormous and distant. But the household makes it human. An emperor might issue a law. A family would experience that law through daily life. A tax might change. A farmer would count grain. A new road might be built. A merchant might travel more easily. A war might occur at a distant frontier. A family might notice the price of goods. A new ruler might appear on coins. A child might hold the coin without understanding its importance. Large history passed through small hands. That is how the empire became real. Not only through monuments. Through bread. Through money. Through roads. Through clothing. Through tools. Through family decisions. The Roman household was connected to the larger world whether it wanted to be or not. But most days, the family remained focused on nearby things. The next meal. The next task. The next morning. This limited horizon could be comforting. A person did not need to think about every province. They needed to know what was happening at home. The afternoon becomes evening again. The sun has disappeared. The street is dark. The household prepares its lamp. Someone brings oil. A wick is adjusted. The flame appears. A small circle of light spreads across the room. The walls glow. The faces of the family become visible. Then the shadows return beyond the lamp. A child watches the flame. Perhaps the child is fascinated by its movement. The adult says nothing. The flame is simply part of the evening. Someone repairs a garment. Someone counts coins. Someone prepares tomorrow's food. Someone cleans the last bowl. Someone sits. The room is warm. The family is tired. There is comfort in the repetition. Tomorrow, the same lamp may be lit again. The same bowl may be used. The same door may open. The same path may be walked. The family may never think about how old these routines are. They are simply their routines. and yet those routines connect them to generations before them. Parents had lit lamps. Grandparents had prepared meals. Older relatives had carried water. The same household gestures had been repeated for years. Perhaps not exactly, but close enough. Human beings had been waking beside fires and preparing food for a very long time. The Roman family was one small chapter in that larger rhythm. Now the household is ready for sleep. The lamp burns lower. The fire is reduced. The door is closed. The family moves into the darkness. A final cup of water is placed nearby. A garment is folded. A child settles beneath a blanket. An older person lies down. The room becomes quiet. Outside, the street is cool. The stone has lost the day's heat. A gentle wind passes between the buildings. Somewhere, water moves through a fountain. The sound rises and falls. The family sleeps. And perhaps, in another home, another family is doing exactly the same. A lamp goes out. Then another. The city becomes darker. The road becomes quiet. The fields beyond the city are black beneath the stars. The river continues to move. The sea continues to breathe against the shore. Nothing needs to be hurried. The night has enough time. And so the Roman family rests. Tomorrow there will be bread to prepare, water to carry, clothes to mend, fields to work, shops to open, boats to check, children to teach, animals to feed, tools to use. But tonight, none of it matters. The hands can rest. The feet can rest. The eyes can close. The household can become still. The little lamp is almost gone. One last glow touches the wall. Then the flame disappears. The room becomes dark. Only the quiet breathing remains. And outside, beneath the wide Roman sky, another night passes gently over the homes of ordinary people. The night has become very still. The Roman household rests beneath its quiet roof. The last fire has faded into soft gray ash. The lamps are dark. The cooking vessels are cool. The sandals remain beside the sleeping places. Nothing is moving now except the gentle air that slips through a small opening in the wall. Outside, the ancient streets lie beneath the darkness. The stones that were warm beneath thousands of footsteps during the day have finally become cool. The market is empty. The workshops are closed. The baskets have been placed inside. The tools are resting. The doors are shut. And behind those doors, families sleep. A child turns quietly beneath a blanket. A tired worker breathes slowly. An older person lies peacefully in the darkness. Somewhere, a small animal moves through the street. Somewhere farther away, water continues to flow. The Roman world is still there. The roads are still there. The fields are still there. The walls are still there. The temples are still there. The houses are still there. But for this quiet hour, none of them need attention. The empire can wait until morning. The family can simply rest. We have wandered through the small spaces where ordinary Roman life took place. Through kitchens warmed by small fires. Through courtyards filled with sunlight. Through dusty streets. Through farms and workshops. Through markets and quiet homes. We have listened to the sound of sandals against stone. We have imagined bread being prepared. Water being carried. Clothing being repaired. Tools being used. Children learning. Workers resting. Families gathering at the end of the day. None of these moments were grand. Most were never recorded, and yet they were the substance of life. A Roman family did not wake each morning expecting to become part of history. They woke because the sun had risen. They worked because work was waiting. They ate because they were hungry. They rested because their bodies were tired. They cared for children. They remembered relatives. They repaired what was broken. They prepared for tomorrow. Then they slept. And the same quiet pattern continued. Day after day. Season after season. Year after year. Generations passed through the same doors. Children became adults. Adults became old. New children were born. Old names were remembered. Some were forgotten. Homes changed. Streets changed. The empire changed. But the simple rhythm remained. Morning light. Warm bread. Dust beneath the feet. Work beneath the sun. Cool evening air. A small lamp. A sleeping room. And finally, darkness. Perhaps that is why the ancient Roman household feels so close tonight. The people are far away. Their language has changed. Their buildings have aged. Their clothing is unfamiliar. Their customs belong to another world. But the quiet needs of the human body remain. The need for rest. The need for shelter. The comfort of familiar voices. The warmth of food. The feeling of returning home after a long day. These small things do not need an empire. They belong to ordinary human life. And so we can leave the Roman family here. Not in a palace. Not beneath a monument. Not in the middle of a great public celebration. But inside a quiet home. The walls are simple. The room is dark. The family is asleep. The night air moves gently outside. A distant fountain continues its soft rhythm. Water touches stone. Again. And again. And again. Beyond the city, the countryside sleeps beneath the stars. Fields rest beneath the darkness. Olive trees move slightly in the breeze. Animals lie quietly in their shelters. A distant road disappears into the night. Farther away, the river continues its slow journey toward the sea. The water does not hurry. It has no need to. It simply moves. And the night moves with it. Slowly. Softly. Without asking anything. The Roman world, which once seemed so busy, has become quiet. The footsteps are gone. The voices are gone. The fires have become embers. The lamps have disappeared. Only the night remains. Perhaps the first faint light of morning is still many hours away. There is time. Time to rest. Time to breathe. Time to let the thoughts become quiet. Time to allow the ancient streets to fade into darkness. The family sleeps. The house sleeps. The neighborhood sleeps. The countryside sleeps. And somewhere beyond it all, the wide Roman world rests beneath the same peaceful sky. The centuries have passed. The people are gone. The homes have changed. But for one quiet moment, we can imagine the warmth of that small room. The soft breathing. The cool stone. The faint smell of ashes. The quiet air. Nothing more is needed. So let the ancient streets become distant now. Let the market disappear. Let the workshops grow dark. Let the fields become shadows beneath the stars. Let the old stone roads fade gently into the night. And let the Roman household remain behind one closed wooden door. Safe inside. Warm inside. Sleeping peacefully. The river continues somewhere beyond the darkness. Slow and quiet. The night breeze passes over the water. The stars remain above. The world becomes softer. The room becomes darker. The sounds become quieter. And little by little, even the last details of the ancient world can drift away. The bread. The lamps. The sandals. The courtyard. The dusty roads. The family voices. The gentle fire. All of it becomes distant. All of it becomes still. There is only the quiet night now. The slow river. The cool air. The dark sky. And the peaceful feeling of having finally finished the day. So rest. Let the night remain around you. Let the ancient world grow quiet. Let the centuries fall away. The Roman family is sleeping. The river is moving. The stars are watching from far above. And the darkness is gentle. Nothing is waiting. Nothing needs to be solved. Nothing needs to be hurried. The night is enough. The river continues softly into the distance. The old stones rest beneath the moonlight. The homes are quiet. The people are sleeping. And slowly, peacefully, everything fades into silence. Good night.